sharp edge is where two planes intersect, yeah? If the finer the angle, the sharper the knife feels. Again, each knife is individual to the maker, to the brand, whoever sharpened it before, to whoever uses it, to what job that knife is for. So a butchery knife will be more robust, fish filleting knife will be less robust, a yanagiva or something for sushi will be less robust but feel sharper. A chef's knife will maybe feel a little bit more robust if you've got a slight convex on the edge. So if there's what's called a hamaguri grind or a bit of convexivity behind the edge, that actually adds strength to the edge. If you've got a micro bevel, which is when you've got something that comes very, I don't know if you can see that on there, it comes almost up to the edge, and then right on the edge there's a tiny change in angle. And that tiny change in angle makes it more robust, which is good. The only thing is, if you've got something that makes it more robust and you keep sharpening and sharpening and sharpening and sharpening, the way that knives are made is, where's my Sharpie? An edge on your knife. So this would be a full, I think they call it a beta togi or something like that. So a full flat grind right up to the edge. That will be incredibly sharp, yeah? But also incredibly brittle, because that is very thin behind the edge here, yeah? If you have that up to the edge with a slight angle here, so if you lost that and then that angle came down here, this bit will actually, it's exaggerated, but that bit will actually add strength to the edge of the knife, because you've got a little bit more meat behind the edge. This bit's going to be less brittle because it's a different angle. Different shapes of grind make it feel different sharpnesses as well, and also change the way that the knife works with wedging and the cutting ability of it. So if you've got a razor blade, the razor blade is going to be, I'm going to go the other way around this time. So a straight razor, for instance, is going to have a grind like this, yeah? So this bit here is almost like a sheet, it's like a strip of foil. It's so thin, it's incredibly, you can get it incredibly sharp. And then this also means you can have the spine of your razor blade there, you can use that there, you can rest the whole thing up against the whetstone, and you've got a consistent angle. So when it comes to sharpening, consistency in the angle is very important in order to get a very, very nice sharp knife. And you can get stuff sharp without having a consistent angle, but it won't be as sharp as you could get it. When there's lots of guides and things available that will help maintain the angle, which I'll introduce you to in a second. That's a full flat grind, which has got several different names. It's got a scandi grind, I think it's called a beta togi. A hollow grind, which is again great for razors. Phenomenally sharp, but not very hardcore. You know, that's gonna chip if you do something wrong with it. And then you've got a convex grind, which is more like this. Yeah. So the convex grind, you've got a lot of meat behind the edge here, yeah? And you've got a different angle there. So that's a more hard, that's more the kind of thing you'd put on an axe or a butchery knife or something like that, which is going to take some abuse because it's got a lot of material and it's very robust. However, if you try and chop up a carrot with something with a grind like that, it's not going to work. And it's not going to raise, it's not going to shave, because the angle here is a lot finer than the angle there, which is all about the sharpness, and that's partly why different steels can take different degrees of sharpness, because the hardness and their wear resistance and everything marries well with certain grinds and certain angles. But the angle of the grind and the geometry of the knife is almost as important, if not as important, as the type of steel that you're using. So an awful lot of it's to do with the way that the knife is ground and sharpened. So sharpening is incredibly important, and getting the right geometry sharpening is also incredibly important for the way the knife performs and the way the knife feels and how sharp it will stay and how long it will stay sharp and how easy it is to resharpen. If I was going to sharpen this knife, let's have a demo. Let's have a little diagram of a Japanese sort of knife as well, with a sort of flattish bevel and a shinogi. So if we had a Japanese knife with two different angles like that, or maybe even flatter than that, maybe, then when you're trying to sharpen this, you want to sharpen this whole bevel. So this whole bevel here needs sharpening out, yeah? Oh, I didn't even touch on fancy hollow ground knives. So, well, let's do this. So this is, so this kind of knife here. So this it's got a fairly, the spine of it's fairly flat. So for instance, the grind on here would probably be something similar to this. Not quite as badly drawn as I did. So the cross section of this knife is probably something like that. Now to sharpen this, what I would do would be remove a bit of material along this bit and this bit, and then put a slight, very slight convex on the edge here until I've got a burr. Once I've got a slight convex on the edge there, I push that burr back over and then polish it, and the burr should be removed. Strop it off, you've got a sharp knife. Now when it comes to a knife like this is from Dan, we've got a flat grind up to the edge here, and we've got a kind of a micro bevel. To remove material to get this knife sharp, I've got to remove all of this to get the edge back, to re-establish the edge, yeah? I mean, I don't have to. I could just keep convexing it up to here. But as I go, this is going to get thicker and thicker and thicker behind the edge. So the thicker it is behind the edge, the different angles change. So it becomes more and more convex, and it becomes more and more blunt feeling. So what you want is to move the shinogi, or the line here, back every time you grind it. So you have to grind the shinogi back and then put your edge back on, which is, again, that's if you're doing a hamaguri sort of grind, which is like a slight convex. When it comes to a Western knife, if I wanted to re-establish an edge on here, I would go in and just re-establish the edge. And I'd keep doing that until it came up a little bit further. Once it's come up a tiny, once it's come up a few mils, which is probably at years of use, it's not like, it's good steel, it's not going to disappear quickly. Once I've moved that up a little bit, then it's time to start thinning the blade down and revisiting something like this. Once you've moved the edge up and you've got too much thickness behind the edge, then you want to basically thin the whole blade down again and re-establish the edge. So you're maintaining the original geometry. If you don't maintain that original geometry, it will just start to feel crap, and it will start to feel not sharp. That's where people struggle. So when it comes to moving the shinogi back and looking after your bevels, your wide bevels and things like this, it's quite easy to maintain the edge, maintain the edge, maintain the edge. When it comes to thinning, which is when you have to remove the material behind the edge to make it feel like a new knife again, that's when I would probably advise people, unless you're really into sharpening, to send it to someone. There's a chap called Alex Colley in Brighton who sharpens knives. He actually came and did a course a few years ago. He's a chef, and he's just started a new knife sharpening service. There's a chap called Scott from Sheffield Knife Sharpening. Scott's an absolute legend. I've got some of my whetstones off him. He's come to make a knife as well. He knows about his stones, and he will see your knives sharp and shiny. There's Kitchen Provisions in London. He's great at sharpening. There's Catawba Knife Shed. There's a lot of different mail-out knife sharpening services. So one of the things that you don't want to worry too much about if you're not keen or not happy with sharpening stuff is send your nice expensive knife to a professional to sharpen it, because that makes sense. Not that I could afford it, but if I bought a Porsche and it had instructions in the manual to say, this is how to top up the washer fluid, which would be, just re-establishing the edge or stropping, I'd be like, yeah, I'm happy to do that. But if I was like, oh, it's got smoke coming out of it and a gasket needs changing, I'd take it to a garage, because I wouldn't want to take the car apart, because I'm not confident doing that. Or I'd try it and then my Porsche would never work again. At some point, it's actually sensible, I think, to send your knife off to somebody who sharpens stuff professionally, because that's what they do, that's their job. You'll get your expensive handmade knife back looking probably better than it arrived in the first place, because this is what these guys do. They do finishes, they do sharpening, and they will do a good job for you, and it doesn't cost you, and they will treat your knife with respect and look after it and not scratch the shit out of it, which is what you might do when it comes to thinning. Does that make sense? Is that okay? Yeah. Oh, let's do fancy Japanese knives.
Right, hope you're enjoying the video so far, and if you are, then you need to know about our sponsors who made this video possible. We have MULTITOOL products who do the 84 engineering belt grinders, Clark Knives who are a 3-generation family-run business who offer stock removal Damascus billets, but also offer professional heat treatment service for all types of knives. And GFS Knife Supplies. They are a one-stop shop for all your knife making consumables. GFS is a small family-run business and some of the quickest deliveries for your knife making needs, including but not limited to handle material, wood G10 liners and pins, the rock blade heat kilns, quenching oil for hardening knives, abrasive belts that can cut through hardened steel, and of course the steel stock that you use for making knives. Have a look at the brand new things that these guys have to offer by clicking the links in the description, and at the same time it's a little thank you to them for sponsoring these videos.
Fancy Japanese grinds. So you get some extra fancy Japanese knives, things like Yanagiba, Deba, Usuba, single beveled Gyotos, things like that, have got a hollow back. So the ura, which is the back side of the knife, is hollowed out. So what you end up with there is you end up with a knife edge, which is kind of like this. Ish. Bad drawing, but you get the idea. The idea of this is this whole bit of hollow here means that maintenance is actually quite easy. You've got a slightly finer edge because you haven't got two sides meeting, so you've not got an angle here and an angle here, you've just got an angle here, which is half the angle of your Western knives. Again, more delicate depending on how it's put together and what type of knife it is. To sharpen this, you can still have some hamaguri there, which is like when you put a slight convexivity into it here, and you end up having a flattish grind there until you push a burr over, and then you put the knife on the stone the other way, and you've got an angle guide again, so that you can't change the angle there because the spine's on it and the edge is on it. So you're just maintaining a consistent angle all the time. And that's basically how you sharpen one of those. I don't actually have one. I do have one kicking about here actually. I should be able to see the slight curve towards there and the angle coming down here, which is like, that's, you know, it's a Japanese grind. It's kind of specific, but it does what it should do and maintains a good sharpness, and it's easy to maintain a good sharpness. Oh, I've got another version actually. Do you want to see another one? Yeah. I've got a much better one. It's in a drawer down here, sorry. This is about 120 layers, 2 different alloys, and what I've done here is I've got the spine's fairly flat. This bit's been stone polished out. This bit's got a hollow, and around the edge here where it's shiny is the bit that hits the stone. So if I was going to sharpen that, I would sharpen this side first with my angle guide there. Probably kick it up a little bit to hit the edge, and then kick the burr off this way, so that that's all done. Nice and easy, but it doesn't need sharpening, so I won't.
If you want to know when the next video is out, like, subscribe, and make sure you've clicked the bell notification. I appreciate your support.